Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Bakasuri Gaijin. We have a special episode this week because we're going to talk about day-to-day life here in Japan. More importantly, we're going to talk about natural disasters. Alright, so I've been living here in Japan for 10-ish years. I was here the first time for about 5. I left for 4, and then I've come back. Been here 4-ish over-ish years, something like that. Japan is unique. I grew up in Southern California, so some of the things that I encountered here in Japan, really used to it. That being said, though, my first official day in Japan, there was one of the world's largest earthquakes, and then followed by a tsunami, which I was not ready for. There's nothing really to compare it to because the earthquake itself lasted for nearly 4 to 5 minutes. Insane. And the damage and destruction of the tsunami, followed by radiation because of Fukushima Daiichi, it's just horrendous. But that being said, I would have never been introduced to Sasebo, and why I love it here. So, give and take. There was some bad and good stuff. Coming back, though, I came to Sasebo, and Sasebo has its own unique issues. Up in Tokyo, Yokohama, where I was, you had typhoons, which are hurricanes. They're just spinning the other way. I don't know. But, you have earthquakes, you deal with all the same stuff. So here in Japan, it's really unique because we deal with earthquakes. Not only earthquakes, large earthquakes. We deal with typhoons and tropical storms. We have volcanoes. We not only have a volcano, we have a super volcano. Everybody knows it, they just don't realize it. Mount Fuji is a super volcano, just like Yellowstone, just like the volcano right near Naples. And it's one of those that if it goes off, you're done. So there is that unique experience. Here in Kyushu, we have Mount Aso, which is a super volcano as well, and we have Kagoshima. Kagoshima is constantly erupting for the most part, so there's a lot of sulfuric entities with that. We actually have a volcano area near us here in Nagasaki Prefecture, and there's a lot of sulfur that comes off of that, and earthquakes and whatnot. There's also a lot of other things that happen here, such as snowfall, which snowfall, you might be saying, what does that have to do with anything? Well, consider you live in Florida. Consider you live in California or in Mexico. An area that doesn't get snowfall, when it gets snowfall, everything goes to chaos. And that is Japan, for the most part. I'm not talking Sapporo and the north because they know what to do. They actually have their own streets. Spray warm salt water or just warm water to keep it constantly melted. Ingenious. But down here in the south, not so much. I'm talking everything closes down, no one goes to work, everybody stays home. Some people just park their cars on the side of the street and abandon it. It's absolute chaos. And then we have rainy season, which if you've watched this channel for a while and you're interested about fishing, I talk about rainy season a lot. It's because we receive torrential rains, like I'm talking deafening rain, for up to 20 days straight. And season after season, we have countless people drowned because they're near rivers or doing stupid things, which is just absolutely crazy because if you know it's going to be raining that bad, why would you do that? So we have lots of natural disasters, lots of things that can happen. And I'm not even talking about the number one, which is right behind me, if you can see. That is a picture of the Kanagawa wave. Very famous painting, but it's actually a picture of a tsunami. So tsunamis are not unique to Japan, but let's be honest, it's a Japanese word for great wave. Tsunamis are absolutely terrifying, and there's nothing you can do about them. When I first joined the military back in the early 2000s, I dealt with the aftermath of the tsunami in the Indian Ocean, Indonesia, Thailand, stuff like that. I went over there and I provided aid. It's absolutely devastating. And then when I first came here to Japan, I had to deal with it all again. And there's still people that I know in this area that are affected by it. They relocated basically because large portions of Japan were just annihilated. People just gave up because there was nothing to go home to. Luckily, they weren't killed, but they knew lots of people who were. So tsunamis are very unique. Luckily for us, our house is super high up. It's one of the main reasons I bought our house at this location, because I know if a tsunami reaches us, good luck to everybody, because we're roughly 20 to 30 meters above sea level. So let's talk about some of the things that you should have in your home here in Japan, or you should be well aware of if you're coming to Japan for a long period of time. I'm talking 2 to 3 weeks. Sorry, feels like I need to sneeze. That's another thing we didn't talk about is pollen. So if you have issues with pollen and it's not snowing, cold, be prepared for that. The number one thing here is water. Now, where you may be from, you can drink tap water. You can drink tap water here in Japan, but understand that most of the areas in Japan have very unique piping systems. So I live in a neighborhood, a cho, which when there's torrential rain or an earthquake or something, the water may just turn off for a slight period of time. And that's because they do it out of safety to ensure that none of the lines are cracked. It doesn't affect our sewer system, but it's things like that. Most of the houses in our area, by the way, run off of propane tanks. So you don't really mostly have to worry about that. If you're in a hotel or you're in the Tokyo or Osaka regions, I would worry about that because they do have gas lines and gas systems there. But if you're renting a house out in the Fuji area, you're in Kyushu, Sapporo, most of the systems here run off of propane tanks. So just be aware of that. Electricity wise, we've only lost power 3 times in 2 years. So electricity is pretty good. If we lose electricity, something's pretty bad. The other thing I wanted to talk about is tape. Nothing special about it, right guys? But this special tape, you're going to see every time somebody moves, every time there's a typhoon, because people like to make an X pattern on their windows. And you might ask yourself, what's the reason for that? So I'm going to show you. I have shutters on the main windows in my house. A lot of houses here in Japan do, and that is for typhoons and high winds. So those shutters protect my windows, and not only that, provide additional aid to my house to keep it structurally intact. But for those houses that don't have shutters, tape is your best friend. You want to make an X pattern or almost like a Confederate flag looking type thing, or British or something like that, because if something hits your window, like a 2x4, a piece of wood, a branch, anything, it's not going to shatter the window. It's going to keep it intact because it's almost like bracing it. So can't say enough. These come for like 200 to 300 yen, a couple bucks. Life-saving though. Really, really life-saving. The other thing I wanted to talk about is an emergency backpack. An emergency backpack is life-saving. So I picked this up for 2,000 yen, so roughly $20. Super cheap. This comes with solar paneled lanterns, propane. So I have a bunch of these, and this is so you can cook. I have an electric stove, so if I lose electricity, I can't cook. It's always good to have these. Tin foil, another tin foil, things that you don't think about. Shoes, and then gloves. You might ask, why does this have shoes? If you lose your house, what are you going to wear? Because most people, this happens in the middle of the night, right? So we have this as a convenient area right near our door. So if we have to leave our house in an instant, we don't have anything but what we're wearing at night, you might leave your shoes behind. Don't think twice about that. Batteries. I like to go through at least once a year and replace these. Just use the ones that are in there so I know that they're not bad. A lighter. There it goes. Glow sticks. Why do you have glow sticks? Because if you get swept into water or if you need rescuing from a helicopter, that's what they're going to be looking for. Stakes for the glow stick. A candle. Oh, not a candle. Sorry. Military. External light, and then an additional light. A bag to put water or food or anything, items in there. They have these in the size of a bathtub, so you can actually fill your bathtub full of water. And that's not to drink, that's to flush your toilet. If you think about it, if you go to the bathroom, how are you going to do this? Emergency silverware and towels. An emergency blanket to sit on that keeps you warm. Cups, tissue papers, emergency first aid kit, more of that beautiful tape, chopsticks, silverware, lighters. Let's see what's in the front packet. And more and more and more of that beautiful tape so you can build a shelter. Now let's go look at some other things that you can do to be safe here in Japan. Alright guys, so to recap this video, let's go over some important information that you guys need to know to keep safe. So what we're looking at here is video clips and still images from NHK. NHK is the National News Association here in Japan and can be found on different apps, YouTube, pretty much every TV and surface here in Japan. It is extremely valuable in emergency situations, and I cannot stress enough for you guys to be familiarized with it and know how to use it if you're planning to come to Japan, you live in Japan, or anything like that, just to be safe. So I'm going to quickly go over this section because this is most likely not going to happen, but you have to realize where Japan lies in the world. Next to China and North Korea, which, let's face it, they're not the nicest of neighbors. So NHK once again and other apps are pretty nice to use. So the next part I want to talk about are apps. There's several apps that you can download in variations. I'm not going to go through them all, but they basically break down different warning levels, earthquakes, earthquake notifications, and things like that. If you're from the United States or somewhere else, it may not work on your phone, but for someone who lives in Japan, you know the sound of these apps all too well, and they wake you up and you're absolutely terrified. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode and you learned some really useful things for your visit in Japan, your stay in Japan. But for the most part, use common sense, guys. Be respectful and enjoy your time here, because Japan is something super special. But just like you go anywhere, even when you're at home, make sure that you're prepared and you understand what could happen, because no matter what you do, you gotta stay safe. Alright guys, thanks for this week. I'll see you real soon.